Welcome to the League of Women Voters program that we're going to call Connect the Dots. The Missouri State Legislature is going to begin its session, the next session, on January 4th. And so what we've done is we've asked guests who are going to be our elected representatives in Jefferson City if they would be able to spend some time with us to talk about the upcoming session. And we're pleased to have as our guest David Tyson Smith, the state representative of the 45th district, now the 46th district.
We'll be changing.
Let's talk about the change and what that means as far as your concern is in representing a district.
Yeah, well, I still represent Columbia, and I'm going to continue to do that hard work, regardless of where I am, whether they put me in a more of a northern space or a central space. It's still the same deal. I mean, I want to make sure that Columbians are taken care of, and I'm fighting for them every day.
What's the learning curve like? You, if I've done my homework well, I think it was April of 2021.
Correct.
Special election.
That's right.
You won. And so April, only a month left in the legislative session in 2021. So you've had that experience, though, and then you ran unopposed to represent the 46th, newly drawn 46th district.
That's right.
What's a learning curve like for you?
Well, I mean, it's drinking from a fire hose. And that building, there's so much going on there, so you're constantly learning. And you're constantly talking to people, and you learn on the fly. You learn as you go. I mean, you're learning as you're walking to session. You're learning as you're walking to caucus meetings. And so it never really stops, especially with term limits when you only have 8 years. You really can't afford to just sit back and relax. You have to, if you want to make a difference, that is, you have to be all in all the time. So I'm still learning. I haven't mastered it yet. I'm certainly not the expert. And I'm not sure that ever really changes. I think you continue to learn and grow as you go each and every day.
So since you came on mid-session, what would that do as far as the number of years that you could serve if you wanted to serve the maximum in the House of Representatives?
That's interesting. So because of when I came in, that last portion of the first session, I think I lose the session prior to that, meaning that I'm not going to get a full 8 years. That's counted against me. So even though I came in officially sworn in the last week of the first session, the whole first session counts. So I would be a sophomore this year, and so I would get about 6 years as opposed to even more than 8. Because I think if I came in a little bit later, I might have an additional session. So I could be like what they call like a super senior and have maybe 9 years or longer. So I'm cut down. So I'll probably have about 6 if I stay the full time.
And when you say if, how do you make a decision? And I know it's unfair to ask you right before the first of your full term, what your thoughts are about the future after that term.
You know, there's so many moving parts. It's hard to say. People coming and going. It's hard to pinpoint, what the future holds. I have no idea other than I want to continue to serve people and continue to work hard for them. And, we'll see what happens.
Once the legislative session starts, how do you plot your week?
That's an excellent question. One of the things about being in the House is that there's so many moving parts and there's so many people talking to you, and they'll stop you and they want you to sponsor this bill, or even if you're walking to the bathroom, they'll stop you before you get to the bathroom and say, hey, can we talk? They won't even ask you. They'll just start talking and hold you up. Or if sometimes you open your door and there's cameras set up right outside and they want to talk. So what you have to do is you have to make time to get by yourself and focus and figure out, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I have to get accomplished. Because if you don't, you're going to get pulled in 100 different directions, and you're going to look up and 3 months will have gone by and you didn't really get done what you needed to get done. So you need to make the phone calls and say, okay, I need to call this person, I need to talk to this person, and I need to stay on task. Otherwise, you'll just get lost.
Looking at it from an outsider, I would say your staff has to be crucial.
Absolutely, and they're great. Lorna, my Cochran, my legislative assistant, I can call her anytime if someone's calling me, hey, talk to this person, help them. And you really want someone who cares and wants to work for people. If you have someone who's not taking their job seriously, it's going to reflect on you and the constituents. So she's been great.
One of the purposes of this program is to talk about what the priorities are going to be for each individual representative or legislator.
Sure.
And you have pre-filed some bills. I looked on one website and saw that I think you might have had 5 pre-filed bills.
Right.
One of them has to do with, I guess, the one that is probably going to be the longest shot, maybe, and I don't mean that as a pun on what we're going to talk about, but it prohibits the selling of automatic and semi-automatic weapons to people. I think it's 20 or under 20 years old. That's going to be a tough sell in the current legislature. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, here's the deal. I mean, teenagers have been purchasing semi-automatic weapons, and they've been going into schools and killing people. And supermarkets. Uvalde, Texas, was a teenager that purchased a semi-automatic weapon, and when they turned 18, and they went into a school and murdered all those children. In Buffalo, New York, a teenager purchases a weapon. In St. Louis, a teenager. So I think that's common sense that we need to stop teenagers from going in and buying these guns. Now, they can possess them. If someone gives them the gun, they can go to the shooting range, they can go hunting, but they shouldn't be purchasing on their own, walking in there the day they turn 18 and buying an AK-47, an AR-15, and a box full of ammunition. So I felt like, I know I'm a Democrat, Republicans control the House, I'm not naive, but I felt like I needed to do something, and I had to do my part. And we'll see what happens. I'm going to do it. What started is I put something out on Twitter, just an inquiry, and I said, I'm thinking about doing this after Uvalde, and I got over 3,000 responses. Do it. Democrats and Republicans. I talked to Democrats and Republicans. They agree. This is good. So I'm going to do it. And I filed it, and the response has been overwhelming. And I've talked to some people. I'm going to have to talk with Republicans, and I have had a conversation or two in the House to see what we can do. And yes, it's a tough pill to swallow, but there may be a way. There's a possibility something could be done. If it comes on as an amendment to a similar bill that a Republican might be sponsoring, but it's going to require negotiation and hard work. But there may be a way, and I have to do something, and who knows what the outcome is going to be. But I can't just sit back and not do anything and say, well, nothing's gonna work. And honestly, David, I don't want to be the gun guy. That's not something I want to do. I didn't come into this session wanting to do that. I prefer not to do that. Who wants to do that and have that burden? We're in a red state. That's not something I want to do. But when the Uvalde, Texas happened, I mean, that was sickening. And then St. Louis, closer to home. I mean, I have a son in public school. And so I'm just going to sit back and say, well, the odds are against us, so I'm just going to sit on the sidelines. I'm not.
So what's this next step? I guess this goes back to a civics lesson. You try to get to a hearing in front of a committee and move from there?
So there's several ways, right? So it has to get to a committee. Then it has to get out of the committee. It'll go to a rules committee for another vote, and then it'll go to the floor. That's one way. Another way is it can be attached as an amendment. So you turn your bill into an amendment, and then when you're on the floor and someone has a similar bill with a similar title, then you can offer it as an amendment and get it on that way if everyone votes it on.
Mm-hmm. What other priorities will you have?
Voting, right? So that's been a big issue in Missouri. We had the photo ID bill come through. The court has found some of those provisions were unconstitutional, dealing with requiring a registration to get other people to register. So, for example, the law said that if you want to get other people to register to vote, you have to register. I was at an NAACP meeting, and people were scrambling around trying to find the form. They couldn't find the right form. It's very difficult to do. The court put an injunction against that and said you can't do that. That's unconstitutional. So, and we knew that. We knew that these were bad laws. So the next phase is going to be the initiative petition process. There was an attack on it last time. There's going to be an attack on it again. I'm on the elections committee. Presumably, hopefully I'll be on it again, but we're going to have to fight that. That's what's coming down the pipe. We're going to have to stand up against that.
We're going to be out of time here shortly, but one of the things I really wanted to get, what motivates you? What is it that excites you about a legislative session? And as we record this, we're still not quite a month away.
I went to the gas station the other day, and I was just there to get, some gum or whatever, and mints or soda. And a guy was there who I didn't know, I didn't recognize, and he recognized me. And he was excited about meeting me, and he wanted to shake my hand, and that does it. It's remembering that it's not about the people down in the building. It's about people out here, everyday people who are getting up every day, and they've got no one to fight for them. That kind of gets my fires going. It's like, okay, that's a reminder that this is not about me or about politics or all of this stuff or ambitions. It's about the people.
What keeps you from changing? Sometimes the saying that I've felt is that politics changes people. What keeps you from changing?
You have to be on guard against that, because there's a tendency to kind of breathe in your own self-importance, which is phony, and start thinking, have a false sense of importance. And I think you have to be grounded and be willing to lose, because I think people treat, when you walk in that building, representative, they're holding doors for, and it's so easy then to start compromising. Well, I like this feels good. I'm going to start selling my soul to stay. And you have to be cognizant of that and be very careful not to just start enjoying it too much, because then you start compromising.
With the experience that you had, and it would be 2 years in Jefferson City once April arrives. I'm just curious as to what advice would you have for the general public to say media and lobbyists and some politicians will direct what the news is come January 4th through May when the legislative session ends. What would you advise us to pay attention to and not to pay attention to during that time?
I say listen to your gut, and if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. I've had people come up to me and say, I have an issue with this, and why did this happen or get through? And I can tell them that was a mistake. It shouldn't have happened. So when something doesn't feel right. I mean, if it doesn't pass the smell test and someone's saying something or they're working for something like this doesn't feel right, then it's usually not right.
Do you ever in Jefferson City think, man, people are following the news and they're focusing on this so much that they're missing something else?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a lot of distraction, a lot of smoke and mirrors. So a lot of times if somebody wants to get something passed, they'll add an amendment on it just to get everyone riled up about the amendment when they're really trying to get this bigger thing through. And so they hold up an apple over here when they're really, the orange is under the table they're trying to get through.
I appreciate your time. League of Women Voters do also, and best of luck, and thank you for your moments today. David Tyson Smith, who is a state representative for the 46th district now, and the League of Women Voters wants to thank Ready for allowing us to use their space for today's interview. Also, thanks to the League of Women Voter members, Diane Suler, Sharon Schneeberger, and Carol Schreiber are the producers of this show, and the series of state legislature interviews will be on YouTube and will be posted on the League's website. That is lwvcbc.org. Thank you.